McDonald's. Beneath the golden arches, dark secrets lurk. McDonald's. The name evokes the mouth-watering aroma of sizzling burgers, the crispy crunch of golden fries, and the promise of a quick, satisfying meal. It's the most successful fast food chain in the world, the heartbeat of countless families enjoying their meals together. But behind those iconic golden arches lies a darker world, one where shadows loom and chilling stories bubble to the surface. From restless spirits to twisted encounters, McDonald's is far from the cheerful, innocent place it might appear to be. Think about it. What's the worst thing that could happen to you at McDonald's? An undercooked burger, a spilled drink, or maybe a mix-up in your order? You might want to think again. For behind the kitchen doors and beyond the drive-thru window, there are secrets that would make you think twice before stepping inside your local McDonald's. Some say that the burgers aren't the only things that can kill you. So, buckle up, because what we're about to uncover goes far beyond the usual food-related mishaps. This is a terrifying side of McDonald's, where even the happiest moments can turn into nightmares. Here are a few spine-chilling true stories that will make you question the reality you've always known about your favorite fast food joint. 1. The drive-thru ghost. Submitted by Maynard, 2015. Maynard's story began like any other shift at McDonald's. But by the end of that night, he'd be questioning everything he believed about the world and the supernatural. It was his first ever graveyard shift. Maynard had worked at the same McDonald's for months, and though the job wasn't glamorous, it paid the bills. On this particular night, his manager, John, called him up just before his usual bedtime, asking if he could cover the night shift. Despite his hesitations, Maynard agreed. He didn't expect anything unusual. After all, it was just another night at the fast food chain, right? When he arrived at 8:30 p.m., the place was packed with customers. But as the clock ticked past 10:30 p.m., the crowd began to thin, and the restaurant became eerily silent. Just Maynard and John were left, with John hunched over a pile of paperwork, while Maynard took charge of the drive-thru, the counter, and the grill. The quiet seemed odd, but he shrugged it off until he started to hear strange noises. In McDonald's drive-thru systems, a chime sounds every time a car enters. But this night was different. The chime rang out as expected. But there was no car in sight, no orders to process, and no movement in the lane. At first, Maynard assumed it was a malfunction and thought little of it. But as time passed, the static on the speaker grew louder, more insistent. Then, something that sent chills down his spine, a whisper, faint yet clear, cut through the stillness. "I see you." Heart pounding, Maynard rushed outside to check the drive-thru window, half expecting a car to pull up. But to his horror, there was no one there. He stood frozen, his breath coming in short bursts. He returned to the counter, trying to shake off the cold feeling creeping up his spine. But then it happened again. The chime rang out, followed by that same voice, soft but unmistakable. "I see you." Panicked, Maynard bolted toward John, desperate to share his experience, but John dismissed it with a laugh. "It's probably just a prank," he said, brushing it off as if it were nothing more than a glitch in the system. But the unsettling feeling didn't fade. In fact, it grew stronger. The drive-thru window creaked open by itself, and the speaker buzzed to life once more. "You can't hide." That was it. Maynard's legs felt like jelly as terror surged through him. He didn't need any more warnings. With his heart racing, he turned on his heel and ran out of the restaurant, refusing to spend another second in that haunted place. He never returned to work again. To this day, Maynard can't shake the memory of that night. The voice that seemed to know everything about him, the cold presence that lingered in the shadows, and the unnerving feeling that he was being watched by something far beyond his comprehension. Was it a prank or something much darker? He'll never know. But one thing is certain. He'll never forget the drive-thru ghost, and he'll never step foot in a McDonald's again without glancing over his shoulder. 2. The Habit Trail Pervert. Submitted by Close Call Trill. We all remember those days when McDonald's had massive jungle gyms with ball pits, an oasis of childhood joy. The soft, colorful balls were an invitation to dive headfirst into carefree play, to climb through tunnels, and to leap into a world where imagination reigned. For kids, it was the ultimate McDonald's experience. But for parents, those play areas are no longer places of innocent fun. For one father, Close call Trill. An afternoon at McDonald's turned into an experience he would never forget. One that would forever change the way he viewed the so-called safe spaces at the fast food chain. One bright afternoon, Trill took his 2 children to McDonald's, the familiar golden arches welcoming them into the bustling, fast-paced world of greasy fries and sugary milkshakes. His kids, as usual, couldn't wait to get to the play area, their faces lighting up excitement as they dashed to the jungle gym, eager to lose themselves in the endless maze of colorful plastic tubes and cushioned walls. Trill sat down at a nearby bench, trying to savor his meal in peace. The sound of children's laughter filled the air, and for a moment, everything seemed as normal as it could be. But as he ate, something about the scene started to gnaw at him. His attention was drawn to a boy sitting in the ball pit, a child with wild red hair and a look of sheer terror on his face. The boy was alone, his eyes locked on something in the distance, his gaze distant and fearful. He looked as though he might burst into tears at any moment. Trill tried to brush it off, assuming the boy was just having a bad day. But there was something about his demeanor that didn't sit right, a feeling that twisted in the pit of his stomach. The boy was clearly distressed, but no one seemed to notice or care. Trill felt an unease that he couldn't quite shake, but he tried to focus on his kids, until the situation took an even darker turn. Minutes later, the red-haired boy crawled out of the pit, but his movements were slow, almost hesitant. Trill's eyes narrowed as he watched the boy struggle to pull up his pants, his hands trembling. The child's pants were around his ankles, and his actions were anything but normal. It wasn't just an innocent accident. It was a deliberate and fearful struggle. Trill's heart skipped a beat, his instincts screaming that something was horribly wrong. The boy looked like he was in pain, as though something terrible had just happened to him. Trill stood up, his mind racing. He wanted to go to the boy, to ask if he was okay, but something held him back, a sense of dread that tightened around his chest. He watched as the boy hurriedly ran off toward his parent, a man sitting by the window who seemed oblivious to the child's distress. But Trill couldn't shake the image of the boy, his wide eyes full of fear, locked onto something in the distance, as though he could still feel the shadows of an unseen terror closing in. Days later, as Trill was casually reading the local news, his world shattered. He was horrified to find a report about an arrest made at the very same McDonald's. A man had been caught sexually assaulting children in the ball pit. The boy Trill had seen, the red-haired child, was identified as one of the victims. The horror of the realization hit Trill like a wave of ice-cold water. He had unknowingly witnessed a scene of unspeakable violation in one of the places he had always assumed was safe. His children had been in the same ball pit, where a predator had lurked, waiting for his next victim. Trill's heart raced, and for the first time in his life, he felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and helplessness. The thought of how close he had come to exposing his own children to the same horror was unbearable. He had sat there, a mere bench away, oblivious to the predator hiding in plain sight. The nightmare of what could have happened was a harsh reminder that danger could be lurking anywhere, even in places that seemed like innocent havens for children. It was a bitter, haunting truth. Predators can blend into the background, and sometimes the most unsuspecting places are where they strike. This experience left Trill shaken to his core, and it's something he will never forget. The next time he took his children to McDonald's, the play area that once seemed like a paradise was now a place of quiet dread. The jungle gym, the ball pit, the soft walls, it all seemed like a facade for something much darker, something far more sinister. Trill's story serves as a chilling reminder to all parents. Never let your guard down, not even in the most innocent-seeming places. Evil can hide where you least expect it. 3. The Bathroom Creeper. Submitted by M. Perkins. Public restrooms are a source of dread for many, evoking images of germs, discomfort, and isolation. But for one woman, M. Perkins, her nightmare at McDonald's would cement a fear that would haunt her forever. It was the summer of 2002, and Perkins and 2 friends were on a road trip through Dallas. After hours on the road, they were starving and in desperate need of a break. They pulled into a 24-hour McDonald's, the bright lights welcoming them into the cold night. The greasy, comforting smell of fast food filled the air, but Perkins wasn't here for fries or burgers. She had a more pressing need, a bathroom break. She dreaded public restrooms, but her bladder was too full to ignore. Reluctantly, she made her way toward the bathroom, hoping it wouldn't be as horrific as she feared. But as soon as she stepped inside, her worst fears were realized. The stench of decay hit her like a physical force, and the sight was no better. Used toilet paper scattered across the floor, the stalls were in disarray, and the place looked as if it hadn't been cleaned in days. Her heart sank as she scanned the area, but there was no turning back now. She chose the least repulsive stall, hoping to get in and out quickly. As she sat down, she tried to block out the filth surrounding her, but that's when she heard it. The door of the bathroom swung open with a creak, and someone stepped inside. At first, Perkins thought little of it. She assumed it was just another weary traveler in need of a rest stop. But then, the silence began to settle over the room, an oppressive stillness that seemed out of place. No footsteps, no sounds of the sink running, the flush of a toilet, or the rustling of clothes. Just eerie, deafening silence. Her heart began to race, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. She cautiously peered down at the floor, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone's feet or shoes. What she saw made her blood run cold. A man's face, pale and gaunt, stared up at her from beneath the stall. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and his mouth twisted into a grotesque grin that revealed his toothless gums. His face was dirty, his hair matted with grease, and his clothes were torn and ragged. The man was lying on the filthy floor, his head tilted upward, locked on Perkins like a predator eyeing its prey. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The silence was unbearable. Perkins' body froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. She couldn't comprehend what she was seeing. How had he gotten so close without making a sound? What kind of monster was lurking beneath the stalls? A scream escaped her throat, sharp and terrified, as she scrambled to pull up her pants and cover herself. But the man didn't move. He just sat there, grinning at her with that hideous expression, his dirty, bony fingers twitching with anticipation. Without warning, he burst out laughing, a sound that sent chills through her entire body. It wasn't a laugh of amusement, but one filled with madness, cruelty, and darkness. He ran out of the bathroom, his footsteps echoing on the tile floor. Perkins was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the man's laughter echoing down the hall as he disappeared into the night. Shaking, she stood up, still in shock, and bolted from the bathroom, desperate to escape the nightmare she had just encountered. She burst into the dining area, her friend staring at her in confusion as she gasped for air, still trembling from the terror she had just experienced. That night, the image of the man's face, his twisted grin smeared with dirt, haunted her thoughts. She couldn't shake the chilling realization that someone had been watching her in one of the most vulnerable moments of her life, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right time to strike. The terror didn't subside when she left McDonald's, and for weeks afterward, the memory of his eyes stayed with her, lurking just beneath the surface of her thoughts. She couldn't help but wonder how many others had been in that same bathroom, oblivious of the danger that had been lurking just beneath their feet. How many other victims had been watched, violated, by the man who had seemed to vanish into thin air. Perkins never forgot the horror of that night. The thought that a predator could hide in the most unsuspecting places, so close and yet invisible, was something that stayed with her forever. After that incident, she could never again walk into a public restroom without looking over her shoulder, haunted by the man who had grinned up at her from beneath the stall. For McDonald's mugging, submitted by Candescent Skies. Muggings can happen anywhere, but never in a million years did Candescent Skies think he would be targeted at his local McDonald's, a place he had visited countless times without a second thought. Little did he know, a routine morning stop in 2007 would soon become a nightmarish encounter that would haunt him for years to come. The familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling breakfast sandwiches filled the air as Skies entered the bustling McDonald's. It was a typical morning, crowded with elderly patrons and the usual rush of workers stopping by for a quick breakfast before heading off to their jobs. Skies joined the line, eager for his usual meal, a simple breakfast burrito and hash browns, and was lost in his thoughts as he shuffled forward, unaware of the danger closing in behind him. It wasn't until he reached for his wallet to pay that it happened. A sudden cold sensation pressed against his lower back, followed by a voice so quiet, yet so chilling, it made his skin crawl. "Don't do anything," the voice whispered, its breath hot on his neck. His heart froze in his chest. Panic surged through him as his body went rigid, caught in the vice of fear. He couldn't react, couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. His mind screamed to turn around, to see who was behind him, but he couldn't risk it. Was the man armed? Was he in immediate danger of losing his life? He couldn't tell. The voice spoke again, its tone demanding and cold. "Hand over your wallet." Sky's throat went dry. He could feel the presence of the person behind him. So close, their body pressing against his. The chill of the weapon at his back, sending waves of dread crashing through him. He couldn't make a scene, not in front of all these people. But his mind raced, spinning 1,000 different scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. The seconds dragged on like hours, his pulse hammering in his ears. Finally, gathering the tiniest bit of courage, Skies whispered, his voice shaking, "I don't think you want that wallet." For a brief moment, there was silence. The pressure against his back seemed to ease, and for just a heartbeat, Skies thought he might be able to talk his way out of this nightmare. But that fleeting hope vanished the moment the man shoved something cold and solid into his spine. It was unmistakably a weapon, a gun, or perhaps a knife, but either way, it felt like a death sentence. The air was thick with tension, the seconds stretching into an eternity as Sky's mind frantically searched for a way out. His thoughts scattered like broken glass, and the walls of the restaurant felt as if they were closing in around him. He was trapped in that moment, unsure whether he would make out alive. Then, as if by some twisted miracle, a commotion broke the silence. A child, no older than 5, knocked into the mugger, causing the man to stumble and lose his grip on the situation. In that split second of distraction, Skies saw his opening. His heart pounded as he lunged forward, bolting out of line and darting toward the exit. The mugger yelled, his voice full of rage, and Skies heard his footsteps pounding behind him. The cold fear clawed his chest, but adrenaline pushed him forward, faster than he ever thought possible. His legs burned, his lungs screamed for air, but he didn't dare slow down. He was close, so close to escaping. Skies burst through the door and into the parking lot, the mugger still chasing him. But in the end, his legs proved faster. He sprinted across the lot, his heart pounding so hard it felt as though it would break free from his chest. He didn't stop until he reached his car, slamming the door behind him and locking it with trembling hands. He was safe, at least physically. As he drove away, the weight of the ordeal settled over him like a dark cloud. His hands were shaking, and his breath came in shallow gasps as he replayed the terrifying encounter over and over in his mind. The mugger's face remained a blur in his memory, just another shadow in the crowd. But the voice, the cold pressure of the weapon against his back, those sensations would never leave him. The mugger was never caught. Sky still wonders if he'll ever see him again, or that chilling encounter was just one more story lost to the anonymity of the everyday. He had been so close to losing everything in that moment. And it's a fear that has stayed with him, lingering in the back of his mind every time he steps into a McDonald's or any other place that should have felt safe. For Skies, the psychological scars of that day are far deeper than the bruises any physical attack could leave. Every time he walks into a crowded place, he's reminded of how quickly a moment of normalcy can spiral into something far darker. And even now, he can't help but wonder, what if he hadn't been fast enough? What if the mugger had succeeded in taking more than just his wallet? 5. The Midnight McDonald's Creature. Submitted by Marco Poco. Some stories are short, but the terror they carry lingers long after they've been told. Marco Poco's story is one such tale, a simple late-night snack turned into an encounter that defies explanation. It was late September 2014 when Marco and his friends decided to grab a quick bite at McDonald's. The night was calm, the air crisp with a hint of autumn, and the city's streets quiet. As they drove through the empty streets toward their usual McDonald's, the place was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that feels wrong. No cars, no pedestrians, no sound of life, just the hollow stillness of the late hour. As they pulled up to the drive-thru, Marco's eyes scanned the empty parking lot. It felt almost like a ghost town. The familiar bright lights of the restaurant flickered in the distance, casting a strange, cold glow that felt more ominous than comforting. The menu board was silent. It was as if the place was abandoned. Still, Marco and his friends thought little of it, attributing the quiet to the late hour. Then, as they rolled closer to the menu to place their order, something unsettling broke the stillness. A low, rumbling growl pierced the night air from the direction of the trees just beyond the restaurant's lot. At first, Marco thought it might just be a dog. He dismissed it, telling himself it was nothing. But then, as they moved forward, something stepped into view, a figure emerging from the shadows, illuminated by the dim glow of the McDonald's lights. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't a person. It was something else, something unnatural, a creature that seemed to defy all logic and reason. Marco's blood ran cold as he saw it clearly for the first time. The creature had glowing yellow eyes that gleamed with an eerie, predatory light. Its body was bony and covered in greenish-brown skin, sparse patches of hair clinging to its emaciated form. Its posture was unnaturally hunched, its arms long and twisted, ending in clawed hands that scraped against the pavement as it moved. But the most terrifying detail of all were the small, pointed horns protruding from its head, barely visible in the dim light. Its gaze locked onto the van, its eyes boring into Marco and his friends as if it could see straight through them. For a moment, time stood still. Marco's heart hammered in his chest, his pulse pounding in his ears. He was frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The creature's eyes seemed to glisten with malice as it watched them, as if daring them to make a move. The growl echoed through the air, sending a shiver down Marco's spine. It wasn't an animal's growl. It was something primal, something that made the very air feel thick with dread. Instinct took over. Marco slammed his foot on the gas pedal, jerking the van forward, the tires screeching as they sped away from the creature. The last thing he saw was a figure standing motionless in the darkness, its eyes still glowing as it stared at them, unmoving. They drove in silence, each of them processing the encounter, unsure what they had just witnessed. Had they imagined it? Had they all seen the same thing? Or was it just a trick of the light? But Marco knew one thing for sure. The creature wasn't a figment of their imagination. It had been real, and it had been watching them, waiting in the darkness of McDonald's parking lot. Beware the dark side of McDonald's. McDonald's is a place of comfort, a symbol of convenience, a refuge from hunger. It's a place we all know and trust, whether it's for a quick meal on the go or a place to gather with friends and family. But behind its shiny golden arches and the cheerful glow of its restaurants, there are darker, more sinister things lurking in the shadows. From restless spirits haunting the drive-thru predators hiding in plain sight in the play areas, McDonald's holds secrets that most of us can't even begin to comprehend. The next time you step up to the counter or pull into the drive-thru, think twice. You never know who or what might be watching you from the darkness. It might be a creature from the depths of nightmares, a ghost with unfinished business, or something far more disturbing. The dark side of McDonald's is real, and it's closer than you think. I request you to please like my video and subscribe my channel, and give your remarks in comment section. It will motivate me to give you best true stories.